Welcome back to Fuchs Around and Cal Them Out. Today we're actually going to be going through that thing that's in our title, Retirement Myths. I am your host, Ben Fuchs. I am here with my co-host, Alex Cal, and let's dig in. So we're going to go into, again, we're going through a few retirement myths. So main myths to debunk. Main myths to debunk. That's right?
That's correct, yeah.
Can you say it? Let me...
Debunk.
No, I want to hear the whole main myths to debunk.
Main myths to debunk.
Damn it, you did it right the first time. All right.
Well, I had some practice.
That was impressive. All right, so I'm going to start by asking Mr. Cal, Alex, and then we'll just kind of go back and forth here. But myth number one, my expenses will drop in retirement.
Usually is never the case, unfortunately.
Tell me why.
Usually we see it the opposite, where now that you have all this free time, there's a lot more hobbies that will start to come into play. You'll go on vacation, you find out, hey, that's not what I want to do, and then you spend even more money.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have work taking up 8 hours of your day and half an hour drive time there and back, and like then you just kind of squeeze in the things that you want to do in between. Now it's like, oh, I've got nothing, and like my alarm clock went off, but like, why do I even need my alarm clock? I'll just
let it snooze.
Yeah, no big deal, because who's gonna be mad at me? Like, there's no boss yelling at you, but I also think that, from my personal point of view, I want retirees to have some kind of structure in retirement. I want them to have some kind of purpose that they found, because we've seen people retire and just kind of fade very quickly. So I don't want that. And I truly believe that having something to do and consistent with retirement helps to fight that off. I remember I had a couple at my old company, like over a decade ago. He was 74 and he was still working. And I think he was like I think he made keys. And she had been retired for like 5 years, but she was 68, so 6 years younger. And I'm glad I'm not saying any names, nor do I remember them, but he looked about 10 years younger than she did, even though she was about 6 years younger than him.
Okay.
And I think it's because he had kept working. So there was momentum, there was process, there were things that he had to continue to work on. I think that kept him younger, feeling younger, looking younger, where the same wasn't the case on the other end.
Which is usually strange. I would notice a lot of the time where if someone retires, the other person will, even if the idea is to wait, they will still retire in like a year or 2 years at minimum.
Unless they don't want to retire and be with the person that they've retired with. I mean, hypothetically speaking, I think that's
a different story.
Right? And sometimes I will be in meetings with clients and I'm like, hey man, you are good to retire. And then I'll see the wife over there shaking her head like, Ben, don't do it.
Do not want to spend more time with you.
Don't. Make sure that tell him he has to work at least part-time, because if we're in the same house together. All right, sorry.
But question number two, or myth number two, is Social Security is going to give me all, or at least cover most of my needs.
Yeah, I think that there may be parts of the country where that's the case. I mean, we live in Connecticut, and so we happen to just be in an area where things happen to be a little bit more expensive. We have clients from all over. But what we've seen from the majority of our clients is that they do like to spend money. They've been good savers and they want to spend some of their money. And sometimes you even have to cajole them a little bit to spend money. But I'll be honest, that becomes a snowball going downhill. Once they've got momentum spending money, then it's, hey man.
I'll take some more out, no problem.
Yeah, that sounds great. Like, oh, I got a guy, great guy, funny guy. And he's like, Ben, you told me to spend money, so I know I have a truck, but I also want a Jeep. But it's just gonna be my around town car. But can I get $20,000 for a Jeep? I'm like, hey man, it's your money, absolutely. But no, I do not think Social Security, for the vast majority of people, will not cover most of their expenses. According to certain studies, only replaces about 30 to 40% of pre-retirement income. That's the reality. And we've had some scenarios where, was this your client that realized that their $2,000 benefit didn't even cover property taxes and their Medicare premiums?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
It's just, when coming down to it, a lot of the time people just underestimate a lot of the costs that go into their lifestyle. A lot of the time it's just they don't have a budget. Where's my money coming out? They just know they get paid every 2 weeks. When we actually go into the numbers and actually look at the bank statements, yeah, property taxes come out to, I think for her it was like 19 grand a year. something outrageous. Of course, Medicare, and then you got the living, which was another.
You can't just live on property taxes. That's not.
No.
That doesn't. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I don't know how.
That's your property. That's you just.
You
live
would
on
think, right?
Okay. You live on your. Well, never mind. You
If it
live
was
on your
Florida,
property.
maybe different story.
That's true. But then you have to pay that in insurance. God
That's
forbid.
That's true.
Have you seen flood insurance by the shore? All right, never mind.
You could just drink the water, though.
Can you?
Well, you got like a little setup.
Oh,
You
okay.
get the salt out.
You know what?
You don't need groceries.
For the community out there, let's keep in mind that Alex has a bunker. So when the end of the world comes, you
You're
don't
supposed
come.
to tell people about the
you don't,
bunker.
I'm telling people, you don't come to me. You come to Alex because I'll be at Alex's, and hopefully he'll defend me and my family with the array of weaponry that he has to keep. But I'm looking forward to
The animals will be the blockade out.
That's great if they're not taken off as livestock for other people. But no.
How else are we gonna get food?
I don't know. Cannibalism, obviously. Haven't you seen those movies? All right.
So you're first, though, right? You're the
No.
biggest guy, so we get last the longest.
Theoretically, I could feed a lot of people. I think if it got back down to it, I would not sacrifice myself. You're all screwed. All right. Myth number 3. Medicare pays for everything.
Okay. So when it comes to Medicare, similar to normal or other insurances you're more used to, like the preferred plan, in-network, out-of-network, there's still going to be a deductible that comes into play. Especially in the government, they're going to pay 80%, you will pay 20%. Minus if we go through an Advantage plan or a supplemental, hey, they'll cover other things, but there's still costs to those, right? And a lot of the time, they don't cover dental, vision, and hearing. If you go to the dentist or you wear glasses like me and you fall on your face a lot, which sometimes I do,
Is that an often occurrence?
sometimes.
I'm pretty sure that your girlfriend's just beating you up, but that's another story.
Well, that's why I don't do a trust fall anymore with her.
Probably smart.
She'll just let me drop.
I don't want to do those at the office because I think somebody else will take over the company. But yeah, I'm with you.
Well, let alone, I don't know if some of the girls will be able to hold on to you while you come crashing down.
I can tell you who's not going to be the one catching me. All right.
Also, when it comes to Medicare, there still is going to be copays that arise. So it's not a all-encompassing, hey, everything is pretty much covered where I go. There are little things that are still going to be there that we still have to pay out of pocket for.
No doubt. I think that from my end, and let's be clear, Alex knows more about Medicare than I do. Medicare was one of those things that I just didn't feel like I wanted to dive into and understand all the different pieces. For me, in my very simplistic line of thinking was, what is the most that any of my clients are going to have to pay out of pocket, right? What is the maximum out of pocket? And there are specific limits, right, per year, per person. And so those are the things that we have to plan for, almost like it's our own deductible from a financial planning point of view. And I think that's how these things meld. Not only do we help figure out plans and we do the fiduciary style of like, all right, what is going to give you the best benefit, not pay me the most commission? But once you've gotten there, how is the advisor planning for that kind of worst case scenario? Where does that money come from? Do we have a plan for that? And that is the box that I need to make sure that we as a company have checked before we go on.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So myth number 4. It's that I can always work longer to make up the difference.
So the problem with these myths is that none of them are particularly positive. Like every time it's like, nope, sorry, Social Security, you need more money. Medicare covers everything. It doesn't. You need to plan. And so
I can just die faster.
yeah,
It's
no big
okay.
right. If you die earlier, all of these plans have to go away. Like you're solid. Like that should be you die early or plan better. That'll be our new tagline. Write that down. All right. So there's a couple things. What we see is that there are a lot of reasons why people can't work longer. Either they're forced out of the company. We've had a lot of people, unfortunately, that have been let go recently. We've had a number of people that have been let go from their companies that we've talked to that were planning to work longer, can't. So now it's like, oh man, let's have a plan in place. And then there are other scenarios where they have to take care of family members, right? All of a sudden, somebody got sick, mom or dad got sick. We need to do more care. It also happens, this is when people talk about the sandwich generation because they have to take care of their adult kids and their adult parents. And it's this tough scenario when it should be some of the prime earning years. That time is taken away because they have to take care of both. And that's, those are unfortunate situations, but really they have to be planned for. And then the third reason is because it's not because they get laid off or it's not because they have to take care of somebody else, but sometimes it's their health itself that prevents them from being able to do a lot of the job. I mean, obviously we have conversations about, masons not being able to lay bricks at 80 years old, like shocker. But we have people also who have carpal tunnel, who have gotten into car accidents that are unable to do the kinds of things they were previously able. And so it's just a tough situation, and we just have to plan around it. So just working longer isn't a retirement plan.
Yeah. I mean, I know one client comes to mind right away. He used to be a lineman, so he would take a helicopter, go onto a power line in the middle of nowhere, and change the line or adjust it so that it's still sending electricity.
Yeah, I had a couple of guys that were all mainframe guys and worked in different insurance industries. And they're like, my line of work, like nobody else can do what we do. Like our job is as safe as it can be. We're great. And then like 6 months later, they were all outsourced. Every single one of them. And it was crazy because it wasn't like they were 68 and they were just hanging on because they enjoyed it. They were like 59, 61, that time when you're almost ready to go, but you still need a good 3 to 5 to 6 years before you're ready to launch. And so it happens a lot and it catches people off guard. And one of the more frustrating things is that if I'm a big Fortune 500 company and all I'm looking at, and I've got a new manager coming in whose job is to cut costs, they're going to look at who are the highest paid people. If we let those go and replace them with somebody who has 30 years less experience, but theoretically will work hard enough to make up the gap, then I'm going to let go of those people that have been here for 30 or 40 years because I'm not looking at loyalty, I'm looking at numbers. And it's frustrating and it's tough, but it does happen quite a bit.
Often, too often as well, which I would agree. It's a lot of the time you can't substitute that experience at the same time, though.
I think we've seen a lot of scenarios where that's really backfired for companies. But does that in the forefront of someone's mind when their specific task, when their specific goal is raising profitability? And I think that's always the problem, is that when you work for a small company like our company, we want to continue to grow and build and try to get as much experience as we can. That's how we're able to help the most people. And that's the way that it's going to be. But the problem is, these bigger companies don't see it that way. They see it as a line item expense.
Yeah, I think it's just the bigger payroll number that they're seeing, and they're like, hey, great, I could fix this today.
I got you.
And then they don't understand what that does long term.
Which is why they bring in the younger managers, because they don't know all these people, so they don't feel bad when they let
to fire them.
Yeah, great. So when I bring in a 22-year-old manager,
I'm next.
Everybody's gone. No, they'll be like, you, sir. Oh, no, you need to go.
Gotcha.
All right. Myth number 4, and this is the one that I think always does a great job of raising my blood pressure, is that the 4% rule is always safe.
It really, there's a ton of studies that go back and forth. Some people like Ramsey say, hey, take as much as you need. Just when the market's down, you slowly stop spending as much, you hunker down. Then some people say, hey, 3%.
Let me tell you how I feel about that. Never mind.
Yeah,
Go
that
ahead.
Doesn't work.
Another day. I'm keeping it in.
Some people say 3%. It really just depends on when you start applying this. If there's a 40% drawdown, you're like, great, well, I'm going to start my 4%. We're going to be in a completely different scenario than, well, hey, we start right before.
So Alex is smart. When he says a 40% drawdown, he means a 40% drop in the stock market. So if you have $1 million in NASDAQ, right, technology stocks have been going crazy, and they go down by 40%, now that $1 million is $600,000. Well, if you start taking that $40,000 a year that you were supposed to take off of that $600,000, you are not going to have your money last very long. That becomes a much higher percentage. And the problem is that some of this data doesn't hold up when we've seen decades where we had the dot-com bubble, where we had the Great Recession, and the portfolio takes a big, massive hit that they can't really recover from. The other thing is that it really shouldn't be one rule of thumb that governs everybody. I mean, there are people that should take 3%, and there are people that can take 6%. It just depends on how the money is set up, how you're generating income from those assets. And it really is, for us at least, it's a case-by-case basis every time on how much risk they're willing to take, how much they're able to take, what kind of a safety net we need to generate, and then other scenarios like, listen, we understand that there are going to be years where you're going to take more than 4 or 6 or 8% because you want to take the whole family to Disney, or you want to go on a 180-day cruise, and we're happy for you. Great, let's set that up. So it's not like these things are going to happen every single year, But these 4% rules, these rules of thumb, they drive me crazy because they put people in a box and they don't need to be.
Right. And I think they're ignoring the risk side, depending on, hey, if you have different things set up that, hey, the market does correct, well, hey, we're still okay to spend that because we have at least some buffer built in.
No doubt. Oh, sorry. I asked you that one, and then
It's my turn now.
And then I took over
That's
and just
okay.
started
That's
talking.
okay.
That never happens. I apologize.
So I think myth number 6 is financial planning is only for wealthy people.
It's really interesting because there is a lot of financial planning that really does benefit wealthy people. And generally speaking, we happen to have a lot of wealthy clients, and we're lucky that we're able to attract those and honor it. And so a lot of what we do from a tax perspective, from a planning perspective, is for wealthy clients. At the same time, there are a lot of things that people can do if they have less income, if they have less money coming in or less needs on a monthly basis for income, where they can have some massive tax advantages. And what happens is, in both sides, the wealthy and then the people that have less, both get to a point where I don't understand this, I just need the money, I'm gonna take it. And, drives me crazy, because there are scenarios where if we plan this out the right way, we can pay so much less in taxes. Not talking like hundreds of dollars, we're talking like tens of thousands of dollars, depending on what you're taking and when you're taking it from. Have you seen that? Am I?
A handful of times, yeah. So most people just tell me, I don't care where we pull it from, I just want it as soon as possible.
Right. And then are you going to care when you run out of money? Is that also going to be part of the conversation? Because I think you might.
Sometimes, yeah.
No big deal, whatever. All right, let's keep going. So myth number 7, once I have a plan, I'm done.
I would say strongly no. I guess a good example of that is there's tax changes that happen all the time, right? With this big, beautiful bill recently being passed, yeah, that opens up a few different opportunities that we didn't have before. At the same time, if we had a plan 10 years ago, it doesn't account for it. At the same time, if these things sunset, we wouldn't take account of it anyway.
And that's true of everything. That's not just tax planning, that's not just financial planning, that's also like estate planning. If you had a will that was written like 15 years ago, you're worried about estate tax limits that are no longer viable. They no longer make sense. You might not even need some of those things that were there to avoid taxation in the first place because things have changed so much. And other times you need a lot more because what was around then or thought to be common practice then is not common practice now. And so you have to have some updating. Financial planning, tax planning, investment planning, estate planning, it all comes together.
But I think it has to be fluid and based on your situation. So as your situation changes, the entire picture changes.
Right. Once I have a plan, I'm done. As long as nothing else changes. As long as you don't want to do anything different than you did as soon as you've retired, which, by the way, is almost no one.
Well, a good example of that is, hey, in the early 90s when interest rates were 10, 20%, 10, 15%.
I think you're talking about early 80s, but we'll...
Early 80s, okay.
We'll just assume that's again, a reminder to everybody, Alex is a
little younger.
Slightly younger than me. I'm slightly older than him. I don't know who, clearly he gets the benefit because...
It's okay.
Yeah, must be nice.
Sometimes. But when those CD rates were 10, 15%, if you were saying, hey, I'll just leave this in and use the interest, that no longer applies when rates are 1 or 2%, even 3 right now.
Right, no question.
It's not viable anymore.
And we still see people that have been in CDs for 40 years because it was once so great. And everyone said it was like the greatest lie ever told was that banks are the place to put your money. Let me not get sued by anybody. But also...
Banks are good sometimes.
Banks are great sometimes. I'm not saying that banks are terrible, but I'm also saying, are banks really the place where you want to invest your money or leave your money in for a CD? I haven't seen a scenario where a CD has beaten what we can get with the same amount of risk and liquidity. If we look at dollar for dollar, very rarely are we like, oh yeah, that bank is a good CD. Sometimes it happens, but sorry, I'm apologizing.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes it doesn't. Oh, is it my turn? Is it your turn?
I think it's your turn now, actually.
Okay.
So myth number 8, and I think how you perceive it also is interesting on how you, well, I'll let you get to it. I don't want to
Please.
spoil it. But how will my kids manage their inheritance wisely?
Okay. So I've got my CPWA, Certified Private Wealth Advisor, professional designation. Alex, when are you taking the exam for that?
That is next month.
Next month. So pretty much knows everything, probably more than me at this point because he's actually been studying it recently. Terrifying. But within there are specific statistics on how long money is left behind. And we're not talking like 100,000. We're talking like 5 million and up, right? The CPW is specifically for 5 million and up. We have plenty of clients that don't have that. But when we look at that, it's incredible how fast the inheritance goes and how quickly it is spent. The average inheritance has gone in 9 months. I think the average $5 million inheritance, I want to say like 76% of something like that is around 70% of it is gone by the second generation. And then by the third generation, over 90% of it.
Pretty much all gone.
Right. And so there have to be real conversations. Now, the time to have those conversations, from my understanding, is anywhere between like 7 and 12 years old, in that ballpark, depending on the maturity of your child. You know, I have 3 kids. One of them was mature enough to have that conversation at 7 years old. One of them was not, and the other one is still below that age range. But, you know, you have to, I think money is one of those things where everybody expects somebody else to teach them about it, right? The parents expect the schools to teach about it. The kids expect the parents to teach about it. The schools, I mean, like, they can teach, but they don't really understand the family philosophy. And family philosophy on money is really important. I still have the milk jug of pennies that my father saved when he was like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, which is a family inheritance, which I may have mentioned once or twice. It might be my favorite possession of my father's. He's still alive. But when he goes, I'm keeping them. And my brother and sister can fight me for it. But, you know, it taught the importance, like someone told him to save his pennies, he saved his pennies. I mean, that was actually a real thing. So I don't think that unless you have real conversations with the next generation, they're not going to manage that money wisely. We need to focus in and explain to them. Every client that has really saved well, that has worked hard, they have a story behind that. Most of our clients didn't like win the lottery, right? Or they didn't win some judgment or get handed. They saved year after year after year. They didn't go on the fancy vacation. They didn't buy the fancy car. They didn't buy the next new gadget. They put that money away and they saved for themselves first and they sacrificed in order to get there. And I think the kids need to have an understanding of what it took for them to acquire this wealth. And I think without that appreciation, without that understanding, 1, they could make mistakes themselves, and 2, they won't appreciate the inheritance that they get.
So it really sounds like education and knowing the values.
Theoretically, yeah. To me, I think absolutely. What about you?
I would agree. I think, at least in my boat, my dad is someone who wouldn't just voluntarily talk about a topic. It's very much so I have to ask him about it. So if I don't know the question to ask, I'm definitely not going to get the answer. So that's where I think at least letting your kids know, okay, hey, you know, when they ask for different things at the store, okay, well, why do we get it? Or why do we not get it this time? And the value of saving and at least earning something for yourself and, you know, being able to buy things for yourself. I think it's a slow over time thing to bring up, and just little tidbits along the way will help grow over time.
Now, I remember reading an article, now that you mentioned up the store, is that I remember reading an article where it was, hey, when we were growing up, my parents said they just didn't have the money and we didn't buy it. But how do we have that conversation when we do have the money and we just don't want to buy it for our kids? And I think that it's a weird thing. First, you know, the whole clean your room, clean your house thing, we have too much stuff anyway. The lack of appreciation for the goods that you already have. You know, don't want to play with these toys when I want to go to sleep in, or I want to sleep in on Sunday morning and I'm unable to because daddy wake up. Anyway, but it is an interesting concept. It's like, hey, look, we can't afford those toys. We're just not going to get them because you haven't earned them, because we don't appreciate them, because it's not that important to us. Just because we see it for the first time doesn't mean that it should actually come home with us. But when we're coming back to inheritance, that changes, right? All of a sudden, hey, I didn't have the money for any of that before, but now, you know, first thing we're going to do, let me get a new car. we're going to take the whole family on vacation. Like, it's literally like winning a lottery for them, whereas for you, it's not. It's 40, 50 years of hard work and savings and discipline that got you here just for kind of somebody else to blow it. So spend your own money, people. All right.
Please.
Lightning round. All right. Quick myths. Let's go quick. All right. I'm too young to start planning. Go.
Never too young. The younger you start, the more money you'll have.
No, that makes sense. I've heard a little thing about compound interest. I feel like that may apply here.
Plays a big role.
Okay.
Yeah. Number 2, investment management is financial planning.
Absolutely not. This drives me crazy. Just because you have a 401k does not mean you have a financial plan. You need to figure out what to do with that money in order to have an actual investment financial planning. Retirement savings only needs to last till age 80.
No. Especially with all these advancements, you might have an exoskeleton suit in the next 10 years. You never know.
On the break here, we were actually drinking stem cell smoothies. So we were just replenishing. No big deal.
It helps the recovery process.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, we hope you enjoyed the show. If you will give us a like and a follow and whatever else that we need for podcasts, I don't even know. But we want all those things, so please do them. I'm Ben Fuchs.
I'm Alex Cal.
See you next time.